Hey y'all, I'm putting in the oxygen sensors before I install the headers to the car, just so that I don't have to be at some weird angle trying to screw them in. When you buy them, it comes with the graphite already installed on the threads as soon as you lift that cap up. No, anyway, I can't. You can see some of it on the thread, so just don't touch that, and definitely don't touch the gauge oxygen sensor itself, and just install it. Screw it in, and then I'm gonna finish it off. I bought I have a Tahoe too, an 04 Tahoe with 180,000 miles. Paid $1,500 for it. I mean, I like working on cars, and even if you have the money to buy something else nice, and you know, sometimes you buy them cheap and put more into them than you could have gotten a new one for. You know, I'm definitely not doing that. And this Corvette, definitely indeed. This stainless works header setup was something like $1,600, and then I bought the MagnaFlow stainless steel exhaust to go in the back. And this stainless works has a high flow cat in it too. And so anyway, that whole system was $1,600. I ended up buying new oxygen sensors. I had to get the new emissions pipe to go on the top of both of these because I couldn't get the old one off. What else? I bought new spark plugs and wires, blah blah blah. So I'm into this thing for a couple thousand bucks at least. A couple $1,000 at least. So anyway, I bought this set here for my Tahoe, so I'm gonna use one of these boards to tighten it up a little bit. I'm just gonna run it snug, and that should be good enough. This is an O2 sensor set in multiple pieces. It was like $10 on Amazon. Alright guys, now it comes time to clean each one of these exhaust ports. I'm gonna try to use my Dremel with the steel brush head on it. Where is it? That wire brush head. Hopefully that's gonna clean it up, because otherwise that stuff is so caked on, man. I don't. All right, go for it. Well, that certainly took long enough. I just used the Dremel tool to go over each one of those exhaust ports, getting that Dremel at the right angle and not catching up all of the paper towels and chipping them up. It was a little bit of a bad, but you want to take care to clean it all up so that you don't have an exhaust leak after you put the stuff together. That would suck after you did all this work and had an old, you know, raggedy sounding engine. Oh yeah, a couple of notes. As I was cleaning up that other side, I saw one of the exhaust bolts had a stud on it, and on the passenger side I didn't write it down. On this side I did. It goes bolt, stud, stud, bolt, bolt, bolt. But on the other side, I don't know which one has the stud and which one has the bolt. Dadgum, I'm gonna figure it out. I can't remember why it had a stud over there. Also, the AC and the compressor and the alternator, they had bars, and so I just made shapes over here on the cardboard about the number one. This is the first one that goes on. Is the vertical one behind the alternator. Number 2 was middle of the compressor, whatever that means. I should know when I put it back together. And number 3 is the third on the third stud. So, oh, number 2. Oh well, I think that's the order of install for me. First, second, third, and that one's on the third stud. And that one's on the middle of the compressor. So, yeah. Alright, make notes of where all that stuff goes. I mean, I'm going to be able to look it up in my manual or something, inshallah, but it'd have been easier if I made more copious notes as I was pulling it apart. Alright y'all, I just vacuumed out each port on the engine, each exhaust port, and then I came back through and wiped it down with my good old trusty B12 chem tool. It says it's for cleaning fuel injectors and stuff, but I use it to clean that gasket surface too, because it dries so quick. And It's really strong. I don't believe it's gonna mess up the gasket at all. Plus, at any rate, it'll be dry by the time I get to it. On this one, some may say, could it be deleterious to the gasket material? We'll find out in 100,000 miles, inshallah. This, I'm getting ready to put in the spark plugs. On the car, it has an emissions thing that tells you what the gap should be. It says the gap, spark plug gap is 0.05 inches. So on my gap tool here, I'm getting ready to make sure all of them are at 0.05. Alright, lighter. Okay, y'all, I did a test fit, just put it on there, and I figured out, I read the directions actually, and the directions from Stainless Steel, Stainless Works explain I was supposed to keep this stud, the stock, this is the factory stud, and put a spacer on it that they provide, and I got to ground off this flange on the nut so that it fits beside the header. So gotta use my Dremel for that, hopefully, and some vice grips. Hopefully I can get that to work out. I put the bolts on finger tight, and then I remember I didn't put any anti-seize on it, so I'm pulling them off one at a time, putting anti-seize and putting them back on, and that should be done. I'm gonna ground this off, and inshallah it'll be finished on this side. So I held it in the Dremel and used the Dremel to try to get as much of the flange off of it as I could. We'll see what happens. Hopefully I don't have to do any more. Wish I had like one of those disc grinders, a belt grinder, something on a pedestal that I could use this to the vice grips to push it against the belt while it was turning. That would be better. I don't have that though. I'm having some trouble getting this the dipstick tube onto that bolt. I ground off the flange. That's what I was grounding it for. And then I installed it there, right? And the reason we have that stud there is so that the dipstick tube can be, okay, let me zoom on back out. It's so that the dipstick tube can be installed to it. So that dipstick tube, I tried using my Dremel to wallow it out a little bit, but it didn't work out. So now I'm going to try to get the pliers and manhandle this bracket over onto that stud. Hopefully it works out. Well, ladies and gents, I think I'm done for the night. Done run into a problem putting it on this driver's side. The hangers, I kept the stock hangers on the bottom, and I can't install the header because it's hitting the hanger, that the O2 sensor right there is hitting the stock hanger that the old catalytic converters were connected to. I took those off when I took down the catalytic converter. Remember, I had to saw it off, and I put the hangers back up so that I could have something to hang the headers with. But I don't know. I'll deal with it tomorrow. Like Scarlett O'Hara said, oh fiddly dear, deal with it tomorrow. So inshallah, I don't know if I'm going to take that hanger off and cut it so that I can put that, so I can, I got to have something to hang this thing on, I would imagine, even though the headers don't have hangers built onto them. Can't imagine all that weight supposed to be carried by the heads. So, alright man, until tomorrow. Okay guys, here's a little problem I ran into. I had this thing mounted in with this bolt, that bolt, and this one. And I had, I think, one of these in too, but I could not get this one in no matter what. So I thought maybe my engine, maybe the head had bad threads on it. So I pulled the header back off, ran that number 3 bolt from the front in. It went in easy, so I'm like, okay. So I put that bolt in, the number 3 bolt in by itself with the header, and then tried getting other bolts in. I could only get this bolt in and that third one. That was it. The rest of them, there's no way. I was like, this thing is messed up. And so sure enough, I got it back in here, and one of the bolts started crooked. So I'm like, nah, this alignment is off. So I brought it back in the house, put my gasket on it, and if you see, this one lines up perfectly. There's no, as I turn the camera from side to side, it's perfect. That one's good. That one's good. That one's good. And we get down here, and you see, and this gasket is tight. The bolts go in exactly the diameter of the hole for the gasket. And you can see that there's metal showing in there, and there's definitely metal showing in that one. So the holes are off in this header, especially you look at that end, you see how much metal is there. And then you come back over here, and that one's just flawless. Even from an angle, you know, it looks good. From the top, looks great. Come over here at the top, not so much. So I gotta call Stainless Works back and see about, I had the box sitting out by the curb for recycling, so now I pulled it back in the house. I'm gonna see, I got to take out my oxygen sensor and see about see what I got to do to make this thing right. See if I need to send this back to them, or if they can just send me another one and I'll cut this one up for them. Alright, y'all, I got my emission pipe today, and I know that stainless, hold on, let's start again. Cut. Well, I'm waiting on Stainless Works to send me the let me see, the new driver side header after they make the corrections to it. So I said, you know, I could go ahead and start finishing up the passenger side. I got my new heater box and evaporator. So I was going to go ahead and just button this side up. Got the emission pipe, put it on, and hooked it up to the back. Well, started to hook it up to the back. Came over here, tried to make the connection, and boom. This is what I found. That whenever that thing is connected back there, it doesn't line up. And I can move this around, of course, but when I move it, that still doesn't get me over that hose. I mean, over the bung. So after sitting, looking at it all different kind of ways, trying to figure out what I'm gonna do, you know, it has to, that bung is just in the wrong orientation. It has the wrong attitude to make that connection there. So you can see that when the emission pipe makes the right turn to come down, that right turn, I'm gonna turn the camera sideways, that right turn doesn't line up with oh shucks. Anyway, I don't know if you can see it or can't see it, but the holes don't meet. And the twain shall meet, the twain shall have to meet for me to finish this build. No wonder putting on headers is such a headache. Imagine if a shop was doing this and every time they got an issue, they already had the car torn apart. Now you're taking up a rack. I'm not taking up anybody's rack, but I am taking up my garage, and I'm not riding. See, if I push this over all the way with my hand, I can push it all the way over, but the angles aren't right. So even though it's pushed over, it's not going to start. And this material is so thin that if I were to try to bend it, instead of bending, it's going to crease. Like what happened over here when I was trying to take the old one off. I tried to twist it off, and the dang thing just creased on me. If you can see that, it just creased instead of instead of instead of coming loose, it just creased. So I gotta send another video to Stainless Works, and I don't know what they're gonna give me for this solution. Maybe they can give me a flexible hose. That is a mighty small flexible hose though. Hope I don't have to take this one off and send it in too. But I've come to another stop on this header install because of that. So let me type it up, send it up to Stainless Works so they can do something about it. Alright y'all, I'll let you know what Stainless Works says. Team, we're back again. Me and Stainless Works decided to part ways. It was their idea. I told them their headers didn't fit, and they said, you know what, we're never going to be able to make you happy, so why don't we just give you your money back? So I said, great. Went online to eBay and ordered from Maximum, I think that was their name. Anyway, got some more headers for $440. Went to put them on today, and if you see these first two holes, let me see if I can get this stuff out of the way. Any? I don't think you can see. Okay, there's the first hole. Okay, if you can see that, here's where this hole goes in. That bolt goes right there, and you can see that the hole is not lined up. That one goes right there, and you can also see that it is not lined up. Got to take some material out of the fat side, which is okay, but over here on this one, I got to take material out towards the exhaust pipe, and I don't want to do that. That hole's way off. When you scroll over, I got these two bolts in. Okay, let me zoom out. Got that one in, just barely. And I have the two in the back end. So I have those two in. That one's in, and the other one's in there too, if you can see it right there. And then we get up here, and I can't get anything started because these holes just aren't lining up. Right now it's leaned backwards because I don't have it tight to the head. It's a big gap. But it's leaning out. Even when I push it up against it, it just doesn't line up. You can even look at these holes and see that they aren't in parallel. So we go to the other side. It's the same story. We got the two in the end back. We got those in. Couldn't get that one. We got that one. And now on this one, you look at that hole. Look at both of these holes, and it's just not lining up. That one's a little bit, but that little bit just doesn't get it when you're trying to start the bolt. Doesn't get it. That one's way off. That one's in, and this one's not. I couldn't get it to start. Can't really give you a good shot of it. Oh yeah, maybe I can. Maybe that one. But see, again, I gotta go over towards the exhaust pipe to get it to fit. And that's not a lot of material for me to be cutting out. I could mess it up. What to do, guys? This is something else. Second set of headers. On the other set, the set from Stainless Works, the passenger side fit perfect, bolted it all up, all the holes were in the right spot, good to go. And then the AIR air emissions pipe would not go onto the top of it. It wouldn't line up. They welded the bung in the wrong spot. So that one I had to send back. Over here from Stainless Works, I'm having the same problem that I had with those. So this header for this driver's side, I don't know what's going on. All right, y'all, I've started putting this header back together. If you can see what's happened now, I got this, I couldn't get the bolts to get started, so I took it to a machine shop and he cut the flange right here and then spread it apart so that I could get the bolts in. That one's gonna line up, inshallah. I just need to get a long bolt so I can get a spacer and move out to that oil stick, the dipstick. So to get this one in the back, that first one started, I had to use a hydraulic jack and leverage, make that the pivot. Man, it was rough getting in that first one. But once I got in that first one, and then set the gasket in between, it was such a tight fit because the header kept hitting this A-arm mount and getting the gasket in. Well, anyway. Long story short, I got them all started now. I had to use this pry bar and fit it up. Hold on, let me show you what. I had it right here so that I can I used the bottle jack down here to make sure to lift, because I could get in the first bolt, but I couldn't get that second one in right here. But when I jacked this up, then it moved it up, it pivoted around that one, and I was able to get that one in. So you got to be real creative with this. If you're going to do this job at home, I think you can do it, but you've seen all the trouble I went in with getting the headers to the bolt holes to align. I guess because the car is so old and out of production, these people's jigs just aren't really well, and I couldn't find any good quality ones. So whatever you buy, you're going to have to carry it to a machine shop, have them cut it up, spread them. And he told me that they have something called spreaders. You put them, if you go to an Advanced Auto and you ask for an exhaust manifold spreader, then they can give it to you. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten these. Well, first I got to round off I got to get a stud to go on that and a spacer for that bolt there, but everything looks like it's in. I just need to torque it down. MashaAllah. Oh, and I forgot to put in the O2 sensor, so I'm going to have to do that too. I hope it's easier than it looks. Well, I'm back at it today. I'm trying to put the dipstick tube on, so I had to get this nut here and round off the edges of it with the Dremel tool. If you're attempting this job at home, you got to have a little bit of extra stuff. A Dremel tool with that metal shaving bit. So you'll see when I carry this nut over there to the dipstick. what the problem was. Alright, now this is where I had to shave that nut. Oh, let me zoom back out. Had to shave that nut right there so that I could, daggone. Right there so that I could sneak it past or beside the header. With that flange on it, it just kept hitting the side of the header. So without the flange, it fits in the header fine, or beside the header fine. I have the header installed, you can see. All the bolts are in and torqued down. My issue right now is this air tube is not lining up. Now this is the same problem I had with the header I bought from Stainless Works. That was the expensive one. They said they couldn't satisfy me, and they said the jig worked on their machine, and so if it didn't work on my car, then my car was wrong. Okay, so they gave me a refund. I ordered these new ones for 1/4 the price, and I get the same problem. That thing is leaning towards the valve cover instead of leaning away, so that air tube does not want to thread in. I think I'm going to go ahead and assemble. I'm not pulling those headers off again. I had to use hydraulic jack, a bottle jack, a pry bar, and all that stuff to put it on. So I think I'm going to leave that loose, leave that connection loose, and finish up this side, go start on the other side, and then once I crank it up, it's going to be loud and crappy, but carry it to the machine shop and let them come up with me an adapter to run that fitting up a little higher or something. They can figure it out, but I ain't pulling it off the car. You know what I mean? We're going to have to come up with some kind of other solution. Alright, so that's what's going on right now. Got the O2 sensor in. It's not pretty, but I tie wrapped the wire up to make sure that I broke the connector from the car, and so that wire, because the connector is broken, I had to zip tie a connection, a snap connection, and then I got some other pieces just holding it in place so that that wire doesn't ever contact the header. It's not pretty, guys, but it gets it done. You know what I mean? So that's what's going on.